Billionaire followed pregnant waitress through the back door. What he saw made him tremble inside. The back door of the small downtown restaurant creaked open just as the last late-night customer left. The dim, flickering lights outside barely pierced the damp, misty air. Tiana, clutching a small box of leftovers with one hand and gingerly supporting the swell of her pregnant belly with the other, hurried toward the side exit. She wanted nothing more than to get home quickly and rest before another demanding day at work. Just as she reached the threshold, a shadow materialized ahead, tall, cloaked in darkness, blocking her escape. Marcus stood firmly in her path, his dark eyes unreadable beneath the hood that partially hid his face. "Let me go right now, or I'll call security," Tiana barked, her voice trembling from a mix of fear and exhaustion. She tried to step around him, but Marcus didn't budge. For a long moment, he simply looked at her, expression calm but eyes sharp and anxious, betraying the careful calculation behind his poised exterior. In his hand, he gripped a thick envelope, worn at the edges, as if it had been handled many times over. Without a word, he held it out to her. Tiana's heart raced. Who was this strange man following her through the back door at this hour? Why did he know where she worked? And why did he bring an envelope? Was it a threat or some kind of demand? Marcus finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "I've been watching you for weeks, Tiana. You hide more than just your name behind those smiles and trays. I want to understand the truth." Suspicion flared through Tiana's tired bones. "I have no right to talk to clients outside of my shifts, much less answer strange questions. What do you want from me?" Instead of answering, he handed her the envelope again. "Take this. There's something important inside. I need to know why you visit that old building downtown, the Unity Community Center." The word struck her like a blow. How had he found out about Unity? She had been so careful, guarding the center like it was a secret treasure. It was her sanctuary, a place where struggling kids found hope and shelter. Tiana took a cautious step back, gripping the edges of her apron like a lifeline. "I don't know what you're trying to prove. This is my life, my work, and it's none of your business." Marcus's gaze didn't waver. "I want to help. I'm not here to threaten you." His voice softened slightly, revealing a flicker of vulnerability beneath the billionaire's steely calm. "But I can't stop thinking about those kids you care for, about the place you risk so much to protect." The rain, which had fallen lightly moments before, began to patter again, soaking through the alley's cracked concrete. Tiana's exhaustion, fear, and relief warred inside her. She could refuse the man and shove the envelope into the trash, but something in his earnest eyes made her hesitate. Marcus stepped aside, his coat catching the wind. "This isn't the end of our conversation." Tiana stood alone in the dark alley, the envelope heavy in her hands. The intense pulse of anticipation mingled with the dull throb of fatigue, a prelude to a journey neither of them expected. Tiana's trembling fingers curled around the damp envelope as she hurried away from the alley, the muffled sounds of the rain mixing with the distant hum of the city's neon lights. She tucked the envelope beneath the hem of her jacket, careful to keep its contents dry and hidden. Her steps quickened as her mind raced through the questions Marcus had raised, the ones she wasn't prepared to answer, yet couldn't ignore. Back in her small, cluttered apartment, the familiar creak of the door eased her nerves slightly. Carefully closing it behind her, she leaned against the cool wood for a moment and took a deep breath. The cramped space, overstuffed with baby clothes, used textbooks, and a precarious pile of bills, was a far cry from the world Marcus inhabited. And yet, it was her reality, her fight, and now it mingled irrevocably with his. She sat down at the tiny kitchen table under a dim lamp's weak glow. The envelope, stubbornly enduring its wet journey, crinkled softly as she peeled it open. Inside lay a neatly folded letter and a check with numbers far above anything she'd ever dared to dream of. With trembling hands, Tiana unfolded the letter. The handwriting was elegant and precise, its words unlike anything she'd imagined receiving. "Dear Miss Tiana, I do not know what drives you to persevere so quietly, but I have been watching, carefully, your efforts to keep the Unity Community Center alive. While you carry invisible burdens, your resilience speaks louder than the city's noise. I do not intend to frighten or intrude, but I wish to understand your cause. Enclosed is a check intended to help with urgent repairs and monthly expenses. I understand pride can refuse charity, but no one should be left to save others alone. If my suspicion is correct, this is no ordinary club, but a lifeline for those who have nowhere else to go. If I am mistaken, I apologize. Please consider meeting me. I wish to learn more and, if appropriate, offer my support. Marcus Wellington. Tiana's eyes blurred with an overwhelming mixture of emotions, shock, doubt, gratitude, and fear. How could this man know about the center's struggles? About the leaking roof, the broken windows, and the children who came in seeking nothing but hope. And why did he suddenly care? Her fingers closed over the check reflexively, unwilling to fully believe the generosity it represented. This was no random act. Something deeper was stirring, something she had been desperate to believe but always kept at bay. That someone with power and money could truly care about their ragged community. Yet her pride whispered fiercely against accepting help that came cloaked in mystery. What if there was a catch? What if Marcus expected control in exchange? Tiana folded the letter, placing it gently back in the envelope, then slipped both into the bottom drawer of her dresser. The sound of a soft ringtone pulled her attention, Maria, her closest friend and a fellow volunteer at Unity. She answered, trying to keep her voice calm. Tiana, the roof is leaking worse than ever. We can't hold classes if it keeps raining inside, Maria said, her words rushed and anxious. I don't know how we're going to fix this. What do we do? Tiana swallowed hard. Maria's desperation mirrored her own. I have some savings, but it's not enough. I'm thinking about looking for a sponsor, someone who believes in us without strings attached. She hesitated, not mentioning the envelope or the letter. Maria sighed on the other end. We can't lose the center. The kids need it more than ever. Tiana promised to think harder, her resolve faltering even as hope flickered faintly. The weight of Marcus's words and the check now pressed on her conscience, they carried a promise, but also a silent question, could she trust this stranger with their fragile dream? The next morning, sunlight filtered weakly through Tiana's worn curtains, casting pale stripes across the floorboards of her small apartment. Despite the promise of a new day, sleep had evaded her, replaced by a restless tension twisting in her stomach. The envelope with Marcus's letter and check still lay hidden in the drawer, an unspoken weight threatening to unravel the fragile balance of her life. At work, Tiana moved mechanically between tables, expertly balancing plates and pouring drinks, her growing belly making every step slightly more laborious. Yet, beneath her practiced smile and efficient grace, her mind reeled from the decisions looming ahead. During a brief lull, her phone buzzed quietly on the countertop. The caller ID read, an unknown number, but something about the tone made her heart skip. Hello, she answered cautiously. Tiana. This is David Chen, a calm male voice said, polite but direct. Mr. Wellington asked me to reach out on his behalf. He would like to meet with you in person to discuss your work with the Unity Community Center. He respects your privacy and wants to ensure the meeting is at your convenience, and your choice of location. Tiana's breath caught. David, the man who had appeared alongside Marcus the night before, sounded genuine in his concern. Yet, wariness fought with curiosity behind her eyes. I appreciate that, she said slowly, weighing her words carefully. Where would you recommend? There's a small snack bar a few blocks from the restaurant, David replied. It's busy, familiar to locals, and the owner knows you. It should feel safe. Tiana hesitated for just a moment. All right. I'll be there this evening, after my shift. Thank you. Mr. Wellington and I look forward to meeting you, David concluded politely before the call ended. The hours dragged painfully as Tiana grappled with doubt and hope. Marcus's abrupt appearance, the envelope, and now this invitation, it felt like a whirlwind pulling her into unknown territory. After work, she changed into a loose, comfortable dress, balancing the demands of her pregnancy with the need to appear composed. Carefully, she clutched the letter and check in the lining of her purse, the tangible reminder of both risk and possibility. The snack bar was a modest place filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and simmering spices. The chatter of evening patrons mingled with clinking cups and soft music from an old radio. Tiana spotted Marcus seated in the corner, a reserved figure whose fearsome reputation seemed softened in this humble setting. His eyes met hers as she approached, and for the first time, there was a flicker of uncertainty, not arrogance, but genuine vulnerability. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly as he rose to greet her, nodding toward the chair opposite. Tiana sat, scanning the room for any signs of unease, but all was normal, families chatting, workers unwinding, and the comforting hum of everyday life. It felt safe enough. Marcus cleared his throat lightly. "I want to apologize if I startled or scared you the other night at the back door. That wasn't my intention. When I first saw you, I was cautious, and I still am, but I realize my approach was abrupt." Tiana folded her hands tightly on the table. "It was a lot to take in. You interrupted my night off. But I appreciate your honesty now." Marcus nodded, relieved. "I need to understand more about what you're doing with Unity. And why you're willing to fight so hard, despite everything against you." For a long moment, Tiana searched his eyes, weighing the sincerity she found there. Could she trust this billionaire stranger who suddenly seemed invested in their survival? "I'm just trying to make a difference," she said softly. "We provide education, shelter, art, music, anything to keep those kids from falling through the cracks. But we barely scrape by." Marcus listened intently, the mask of the powerful man slipping to reveal someone touched by her determination. "Then tell me everything," Marcus said, voice steady but open. "Let me see if I can help, not just with money, but with something that matters." The offer hung between them like a fragile truce. The night air was crisp and carried the faint scent of wet pavement as Tiana led Marcus and his assistant David through the winding streets to the Unity Community Center. The center was tucked away in a rundown part of town, a battered old brick building whose faded paint and warped windows told the story of years of neglect. Yet its sturdy frame stood defiantly against the creeping decay, much like the people who relied on it. Marcus's gaze was sharp, taking in every detail, the chipped steps she carefully maneuvered, the grimy windows etched with peeling blinds, the faded posters announcing events and club times long past. Despite its worn exterior, the building held an intangible warmth, a palpable pulse that spoke of hope and resilience. Inside, the dim lighting did little to mask the peeling plaster and stained ceiling tiles. Yet, scattered throughout the space were signs of life, a battered piano resting in one corner, paintbrushes and canvases tucked into a dusty shelf, notebooks covered in scribbles of homework assignments. Tiana's voice carried quietly as she walked, pointing out areas of concern and pride in equal measure. "This is the main hall. Some evenings, the kids come here for music lessons, painting classes, or just a safe place to hang out after school." Marcus nodded, stepping gingerly over a loose floorboard near the edge of the room. "And the roof?" Tiana sighed, the worry evident in the lines around her eyes. "Leaking. Too badly to ignore. We patch it up when we can, but every rainy day means drips and damage. If it gets worse, the city inspectors could shut us down." David shifted forward, pulling a notepad from his coat. He began noting the cracks and areas Marcus pointed out. Marcus's fingers brushed over a window frame swollen with moisture. "What about heating? Wiring?" "Barely working," Tiana admitted. "Heaters are old and often break down. Wiring hasn't been updated in years." They continued to the back rooms, small spaces converted into makeshift classrooms and after-school clubs. A few girls around 10 years old sat bent over sketchbooks, fingers stained with pencil, shyly watching the visitors. Tiana smiled warmly and patted one girl's shoulder. These are our little artists. Marcus knelt beside them, peering at their colorful drawings. You've built a real community here, he said softly, surprising Tiana with the tenderness in his voice. When they reached the narrow staircase ascending to the second floor, the ceiling groaned underfoot. A dank, musty smell clung to the air. Water stains darkened the corners, and jagged plaster hung precariously from the walls. Carlos, a volunteer who had arrived earlier to help with upkeep, joined them, dressed in a faded jacket. Every rainy season, we brace ourselves, he said, running a hand across the cracked plaster. The kids love it here, but this place is falling apart beneath us. Marcus's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. He recalled his own childhood in an old house that had suffered through neglect and repair. He understood the weight these cracks and leaks carried, not just the physical danger, but the symbolic erosion of hope. As they descended back to the ground floor, Marcus turned to face Tiana and the team. I see what you've been fighting to keep alive. It's more than a building, it's a lifeline for everyone who walks through these doors. Tiana felt a swelling mix of pride and fear, pride that Marcus saw the cause's heart, fear of what accepting his help might mean. Marcus glanced over at David, then back to the group. There's much to do. But it's not impossible. If you'll allow it, I want to be part of the solution. The murmur of children's laughter echoed faintly from the piano corner, as if affirming his words. Gathered in the somewhat brighter main hall of the Unity Community Center, Tiana, Marcus, David, Maria, Carlos, and Gloria huddled around a worn table, papers and sketches strewn across its surface. The atmosphere was a mix of cautious optimism and lingering tension. Marcus cleared his throat, breaking the silence. I understand that accepting help comes with concerns, about control, privacy, and independence. I want to be clear, my intent is not to take over your center. I want to support your mission while respecting your autonomy. Maria, wiping the worry from her brow, spoke first. We appreciate that, but many offers have come and gone. People promise big things and disappear when it gets hard. We can't afford to be dependent or lose control of what we've built. Tiana nodded in agreement. Unity is more than a building to us. It's a community effort. I won't give that up, no matter how much money is on the table. Marcus listened, his gaze steady but understanding. I don't want to force anything or demand recognition. If the check is accepted, it will be official and transparent. No hidden deals, no strings attached. You will remain in charge. David chimed in, spreading out a preliminary repair estimate on the table. From what we saw yesterday and the initial inspection reports, the roof and heating system need urgent attention. Then the wiring and structural reinforcements. The estimate is substantial, but manageable with phased work. Carlos scratched his head. If the funding is confirmed, we'll have to coordinate carefully. Some classes may need to be postponed, and we'll need volunteers for moving furniture and prepping. Gloria, adjusting her shawl, offered a gentle smile. It's a lot to handle, but with help, it's possible. Marcus picked up a pen and made notes. If you agree, I can arrange trusted contractors to begin as soon as approvals are in place. I can also provide support for paperwork and liaison with city officials to fast-track permits. Tiana folded her arms, weighing the offer. It all sounds great, but what about after repairs? Will you expect us to follow your direction or represent you? Marcus shook his head firmly. Absolutely not. If anything, I want to be a partner, someone you can call on but who respects your culture here. I'm interested in true collaboration. Maria exhaled deeply, eyes darting to Tiana, silently urging her to make the call. Tiana looked again at the room. The people who had poured their hearts into this battered sanctuary. For once, a glimmer of hope stirred amid the fears. Okay, she finally said, voice resolute. We'll accept your help, on our terms. Openly, honestly, without compromising our mission or independence. Marcus gave a slight, appreciative smile. Thank you, Tiana. That means a lot. David gathered the papers, ready to begin work on detailed plans and contracts. As the meeting broke up, the weight on Tiana's shoulders lightened. The road ahead would be tough and uncertain, but the promise of rebuilding, of saving Unity, felt tangible for the first time in years. The morning sun filtered weakly through the cracked windows of the Unity Community Center, casting slanting shafts of light over the worn floorboards and threadbare curtains. Tiana arrived early, her steps purposeful despite the weariness settling in her bones. She carried a list, a compilation of items and spaces that needed clearing, as well as a heart heavy with the gravity of the days ahead. The center buzzed quietly with a mix of volunteers and a few lingering children, the familiar sound of laughter and chatter floating amid the dust. Maria was already coordinating a small group, and Carlos was helping carry out old, heavy furniture with the careful strength born from years of dedication. "We need to clear the main hall first," Maria explained breathlessly. "If the workers are going to fix the roof, there can be no distractions. And the kids will need to be safe." Tiana nodded, surveying the peeling walls with a mix of fondness and guilt. This place had been their refuge for so long, but it was time to make way for change. Across the room, the unmistakable rumble of a car engine drew their attention. The sleek, black vehicle parked quietly at the curb, and David Chen stepped out, tablet in hand, followed by Marcus Wellington, the man whose entrance had sparked chaos but also hope. Marcus removed his coat and scanned the scene with an appraising eye. "Looks like you're already rolling up your sleeves," he said with a rare smile. Tiana watched him carefully, still measuring how much of the man behind the money she could trust. David approached, tapping his tablet. "We've completed a preliminary schedule based on yesterday's inspection. The roofing team arrives tomorrow morning with materials and safety gear. We'll proceed in phases, first the roof, then interior repairs." Carlos raised a brow. "We'll have to relocate classes temporarily. Any ideas where the kids should go when the noise gets too much?" Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "I have friends with unused community rooms nearby. I'll arrange for those spaces to be available at little to no cost while renovations proceed." Maria squeezed Tiana's arm in thanks. "That would be a lifesaver. Otherwise, some kids would be left with nowhere to go." Tiana, still dubious but growing hopeful, glanced around the room at the worn piano, the stacks of notebooks, and the colorful art supplies meticulously organized on the shelves. "Let's not forget," she said quietly, "this isn't just a building, it's a home." Marcus's gaze softened. "That's why I want to do this right. I'll personally oversee that everything is done with respect to the center's atmosphere and needs." They moved through the rooms, discussing logistics, rearranging spaces, and juggling concerns about noise, safety, and continuity. Later, as volunteers busied themselves clearing out old cabinets and stacks of papers, Tiana called several neighborhood friends, seeking additional hands to help pack and carry. Hours slipped by, punctuated by the occasional interruption of children's laughter or the bark of a distant dog. Despite the physical strain, a renewed sense of community bloomed. Yet beneath her fatigue, Tiana wrestled with her own apprehensions. How much control would Marcus want? How would the changes change them? Could the fragile trust they had built withstand the coming storm? That evening, as she sat alone on the center's doorstep, traces of paint still clinging to her fingertips, Tiana's thoughts lingered on the future, uncertain, challenging, but undeniably hers to shape. Early the next day, the sound of heavy footsteps and clanking tools filled the Unity Community Center's main hall. A team of contractors arrived promptly, unloading ladders, rolls of tarpaulin, buckets of plaster, and other materials essential for the grueling renovation ahead. Among them was Edward, a seasoned contractor with a thick beard and weathered hands, whose practical attitude immediately put the volunteers at ease. Marcus accompanied the crew, his usual polished demeanor softened by the dust and noise of the aging building. He moved with purpose, listening intently as Edward and David discussed structural concerns, repair strategies, and timelines. David tapped notes into his tablet, projecting plans and cost estimates for all to observe. Our priority has to be the roof and its supports. If that isn't sound, nothing else matters. We also need to replace a section of the second floor flooring, and the wiring must be updated before winter. Tiana stood nearby, fatigue tugging at her sleeves as she watched with a mixture of hope and apprehension. The messy layers of years-old paint chips, dust, and flaking plaster bore silent witness to the center's struggles, but now the prospect of repair seemed finally real. Maria joined her, brushing strands of hair from her face. It's overwhelming, isn't it? But look, this is the first time in years we've had the resources to fix things properly. Tiana nodded. I just hope we can keep everything running while the work's going on. Edward approached them with a solemn look, voice low but steady. You'll need to move the children and most activities out for a time. Construction noise, dust, and open ceiling beams make it unsafe to stay. He glanced toward Marcus. We can try to limit disruptions, but it will take weeks. Carlos, passing by with a box of supplies, stopped to add, we'll have to be creative, temporary locations, adjusted schedules. The kids deserve some normalcy. Marcus folded his arms thoughtfully. I'm already lining up nearby spaces for classes and activities. We'll keep the programming going, just in a different place. David nodded. And I'll work with the city on any complications to minimize delays. Yet even amidst the cooperation and careful planning, tension began to surface. Volunteers debated over priorities, some frustrated by the sudden upheaval, others concerned about the future of funds and donations. Tiana, Maria whispered quietly as they helped carry bulky furniture out of a classroom, what if this backfires? What if they don't stick around once the work starts? What if Marcus loses interest? The question hung heavily in the air, unanswered. Tiana met Maria's worried gaze. I don't know. But I have to believe people want to help for the right reasons. Later, during a brief break, Marcus approached Tiana alone near the rear entrance. The hum of saws and hammers punctuated the evening air. How are you holding up? He asked, watching her struggle with a heavy box. Tiana forced a tired smile. It's exhausting. But keeping the center alive means everything. Marcus hesitated. I know this is about more than money for you. It's about hope and trust. I don't want to let you or the kids down. Tiana looked up at him with guarded hope. Neither do I. They stood momentarily, united against the coming challenges, the echoes of construction around them underscoring the delicate task ahead. Days into the renovation, the Unity Community Center felt more like a construction zone than the vibrant refuge Tiana had fought so hard to protect. While the workers patched ceilings and replaced moldy wood, a quiet unease crept among the volunteers and staff. The familiar rhythms of classes and after-school programs had been disrupted, forcing children to attend temporary spaces, sometimes farther away, making attendance inconsistent. One afternoon, Maria sat beside Tiana in the partially cleared main hall, her voice weary. I don't know if all this is worth it. The kids are struggling to adjust. Some have stopped coming altogether. What if we lose them for good? Tiana shared the concern silently, but her resolve was unwavering. Change is hard. But without repair, Unity's doors won't open much longer. We have to keep pushing. Marcus arrived unpredictably those days, sometimes to check progress, other times to offer quiet encouragement. His presence had shifted since their first meeting, no longer a distant figure, he wore a more humane, approachable air. One afternoon, while reviewing the work plan near a cracked wall, he surprised Tiana with an unexpected offer. I've been thinking, Marcus began, about ways to help beyond the repairs. Maybe we can bring in some educational programs that connect the kids to the technology and skills of the future. Tiana raised an eyebrow in cautious interest. Like what? Workshops, guest lectures, even internships, anything that can bridge their world to opportunities they might never have imagined. I have connections in tech and science. The idea sparked a small flame of excitement. That could mean a lot for them, she said slowly. giving them a way out, a path forward. Yet alongside these new bonds formed, doubt gnawed at the edges of trust. Some volunteers whispered concerns among themselves about Marcus's true intentions. Was this just philanthropy, or something more transactional? Others worried about the center losing its grassroots spirit in the face of corporate influence. During a heated discussion one evening, Carlos voiced his fears bluntly. "We don't want to become a showpiece for someone else's agenda. Unity has to stay ours." Tiana listened, torn between defending their ally and acknowledging the reality. "We have to set boundaries," she told the group. "Accept help without losing ourselves." That night, alone in the quiet center after everyone had left, Tiana sat by a makeshift desk, poring over Marcus's letter again. Her thoughts wandered to the man who had followed her through the back door, the stranger who had fallen to his knees after seeing what she protected. There was something honest there, not perfect, but sincere. For the first time, she felt the weight of shared responsibility, the fragile formations of a partnership neither of them could have anticipated. She touched her belly gently, thinking of the future, for herself, the children, and unity. The road ahead was uncertain, tangled with risks and promises. But maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something bigger than fear. The morning sunlight broke through the patched windows of the Unity Community Center, casting long beams over new paint and freshly installed light fixtures. The renovation was progressing faster than anyone had dared hope, a testament to the dedication of the workers and the determination of Marcus's team. The cracked floors were being reinforced, and the heating system was humming softly for the first time.